and a maximum of 10% of play. Now, if we have more people, things might have been different, but now that we've called the week, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the actual panel of Pop Team Epic Trolling as an Art Form. We're going to be discussing sort of what Pop Team Epic is starting out, and then we'll go into sort of what Pop Team Epic has done to troll the industry and anime fans as a whole, and how that may be considered similar to what postmodern art used to do back in the day. And we'll go ahead and get started. So what is Pop Team Epic? Pop Team Epic is currently an anime, but what started out as a Japanese webcomic that was made in August of 2014. Now, good luck trying to pronounce the name of the author, but it's something like Bakub Okawa produced it for the Manga Life Win manga website. It was a Japanese website that came out, and the anime debuted in January 7th of 2018 and was produced by King Records, and it was animated by Kamikaze Doga. Now keep the name King Records in mind. This will be important and this will be on the test. Ta-da!
It's him. You gotta expect a test.
So, well, Kat keeps calling me a professor. So, the show is designed to play each of the skits, because it's separated in tiny little skits, twice. And it's designed similar to how some people who have watched Robot Chicken know how they'll make little skits with pop references and things like that. Well, they have two sets of skits, each separated into like 20 to 30-minute episodes. And half of the episode will have the two main characters be male voice actors, and for the second half of the episode, they'll be female voice actors. And we'll get into why in a minute, but the show is meant to deviate expectations, and it was meant to be different and strange. And while a lot of people compare it to Robot Chicken, there's a lot of ways that I would say that it's different because of how weird its presentation was when it first got started. And it's one of those shows where people either really hate it or really love it for stupid reasons. So for example, some of the references that you might see, either from the fandom, the comics, or the show, include such things like Harry Potter, Pokemon. This was actually in the show, by the way. Skyrim. For any of those people that love Skyrim and Fallout and such. Salt Bay, the meme. And that's from the actual comic, by the way. And Toby Fox's Undertale. And that is an actual quote from Toby Fox's Twitter. He actually said that. These are the two main characters that you're going to see throughout every episode of the show. They're called Popoko and Peepamy. Once again, they have 4 voice actors, 2 actors and 2 actresses each episode. And you might recognize some of the voice actors and actresses from the con, actually, because Cynthia Kranz, who's here this weekend, was actually Peepamy in episode 11, and Natalie Hoover voiced Ponta the hamster, and I think episode either 6 or 8. Another thing to note, though, too, is that when it came to trolling the voice actors, it was actually questioned by some people as to why male voice actors for the characters. And there's a lot of theories why that might have happened, but part of it was the fact that they requested to be voiced by male voice actors in the actual comic. This is an English translation from a fan site, so it may not be 100% accurate, but it is close. It's the closest that I could find. One of the ways, though, that they trolled the voice actors and actresses that participated was that they basically showed them the scenes and basically just said, wing it. You can't do that in a professional setting. And the reason why you can't do that in a professional setting is some of them got upset. Some of them were sitting there going, really, what are we supposed to do? And it got to a point where at one point there were 2 voice actors that stormed out just in a complete rage. We've never dealt with anything so unprofessional in our lives, and we can't believe that you would ever have done this. So then Pop Team Epic recorded that scene and put it in their show. twice. So once again, they trolled the voice actors. They also trolled any anime news networks in Japan.
You lied to me when you showed me this.
I did. See, I'm not the only one. What actually happened was they were supposed to schedule 2 anime at the same time. Hoshiro Girl Drop, a Pop Idol rom-com anime, and Pop Team Epic. But they claimed that Pop Team Epic was delayed for 3 months due to weird, suspicious, unknown errors. It just said errors. And then later on, Hoshiro Girl Drop airs at its normally scheduled time. However, after they air the first couple minutes of the show, after they air an entire song that they did with glorious graphics and beautiful artwork with just such dedication, they pretend like they're about to start the episode, and suddenly one of the main characters rips the screen open and goes, "No!" And then the show gets started as Pop Team Epic. And every episode after that, every single one, the ending themes, the little ending section where they tell you about what the next episode is going to be about, was always about Hoshiro Girl Drop. Every single one. The show you were never going to get to see. This is actually why my cousin Kat is actually not up here on this scene today, because she wanted that anime to be real.
It was a disaster. I cried for 3 hours.
She was not happy with me. She was also not happy because they made fun of AKB in like episode 7.
You're lucky I don't have my Grim Reaper gob.
She's going to end up making me participate in a AKB panel later down the road, so vengeance is glorious. Now that being said, the fan response was so strong that they actually wanted this show to exist, that they ended up making a comic on the side, which is actually available online for free for the people that want to see it, as sort of a weird apology for like, "Hi, we know we broke your hearts, but our bad." Finally, they made fun of the people that paid money to make their show by associating them with fidget spinners and making them the villains of their show, resulting in a gigantic and glorious mech battle of epic proportions. And yes, it was amazing. It looked like a reference to Transformers. It was awesome. And yes, before anybody asks, that is in fact a fidget spinner. They took the time to animate a fidget spinner. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. The response was kind of mixed. People either loved it or really hated it. It only aired on Toonami for like a couple of months, like maybe 4 at most. And people in Japan didn't want to admit they liked the show. In fact, most of them sat there, if you asked them on the street, they were like, "No, it's terrible. It just completely destroys anime. It's just awful. It just completely defies anything that anime is supposed to be." Until you check their Twitters. And then all of them are like, "Oh, it's glorious. It's a show about memes. We're all about that live." But I mean, that's dedication though. Mascot costumes. So the reason why I'm bringing this up today, and the reason why we're going into all of this, is to discuss the question of whether or not trolling or defying expectations to kind of mess with people can be considered as an art form. And there are a lot of people that have different perspectives on that, but many artists have done things in the past that could be considered trolling, especially people in the postmodern art movement. And the thing about postmodern art is that if we're really going to define it, we have to define what it's making fun of. Because the art style that came before it was modernism. Modernism was defined by very certain specific optimistic characteristics. It saw art as being needed to be put on a pedestal and to be put, up high for all to see, like it's something glorious, that it was supposed to be the author that was supposed to determine who decides what art is supposed to be and how art is supposed to be defined. But it also listed such things as forward-thinking approach, the ideas of technological positivity, and grand narratives of the Western domination and progress. However, this piece right here is delightful. What you're seeing before you, as I mentioned in the little source code there, is René Magritte's The Treachery of Images. René Magritte designed this nasty little picture, as much as I love it, to act as a paradox. It is written in French, and it says, "This is not a pipe." You've probably seen this in just about any high school class, and you're probably looking at it there going, "Oh no. Come on, Brandon, I didn't come here to be educated. I came here for anime. What's going on?" But the reason why this is a heinous, hilarious trolling moment is when you consider the fact that it is both a pipe and not a pipe at the same time. It is a picture of a pipe, but it is also an image and not an actual real pipe. Hence where it was defying expectations and was somewhat strange and bizarre. Postmodern art as a whole, and yes, that is Cuphead, postmodern art rejects the concepts of art needing an end goal, art needing a single meaning, art needing to be put on a pedestal, and that the meaning of an art piece is determined by just the artist. Now you'll notice with trolling and things like that, that oftentimes the payoff is what ends up being the response of the viewer. And that's kind of how postmodern art kind of interacted with people. Postmodern art values the viewer's role in developing the meaning, the viewer's creation of the piece, and that art can be enjoyed by all without requiring training or being put on a pedestal or being an art connoisseur. Our next example of postmodern art is the floor burger. This is by Klaus Oldenburg. This is literally a junk food piece made out of junk. It is put on the floor. It is not kept on a pedestal. It is put on the same place you'd wipe your shoes. And at the same time, it kind of popularizes this idea of popular or low culture. And you'll see a lot of that with these kind of pieces. The next piece, and one that a lot of people don't think about, but actually is a little bit more controversial than people consider, is Marilyn Diptych by Andy Warhol. Now, everybody here has probably heard about Andy Warhol. Once again, I'm not going to try to jump into your, high school education, when it comes to that kind of thing, because everybody's heard about it before. But this particular piece was controversial for a couple of reasons. The first being that it was released shortly after Marilyn's death. Too soon, guys. Just a little bit. And it was supposed to show that dichotomy between life or death in the piece. One other thing that you might find interesting is that it was also copyright infringement. He did not ask permission before putting this picture as a painting. He just took a bunch of photos of a person that formerly existed, painted over them, and basically called it art. And we have considered it art to this day, because he slightly altered the pictures. But it changed and challenged the idea of what is art and what qualifies as an art piece. And it calls into question the questionable role of the artist. So exactly how much work did he really apply to this? And then finally, the most controversial piece that we're going to talk about tonight is the Rhythm Zero, 7 Easy Pieces, 1974 by Marina Abramovic. That's hard to say in one breath. So I can't show you pictures of this because of the fact this is a family-friendly panel, because there is some nudity. But to explain what this piece entailed, guests or viewers would come into a room, and in the room there would be the artist sitting on a stool, and there would be a table to the side of different items of various kinds. And the artist, Maria, she was actually sitting there in her birthday suit, and basically it was a game of, a game of Whose Line Is It Anyway, where you have somebody pose you in specific, what was it? Yes, moving people. It was basically a game of that, where they would have to pose her in different stances and holding different objects.
More like Russian roulette with her.
See, I'm glad you say that, though, because it was very dangerous what she did, and very daring, because she was basically allowing the entirety of her art piece, and even her safety, to the viewers to, basically portray whatever piece they were going to portray. And the items on the table ranged from a whiteboard with a marker to things like a loaded gun. Really controversial stuff. So, and even a set of knives on the table. And what started, and the reason why she did this is she wanted to test and see how far are the viewers going to take this piece? What is going to happen? And what happens when you give the viewer complete control over the art piece as a whole? And what she found was at first, the pieces were humorous. They were funny, but as for a while, they started going into darker territory where they're talking about societal ills and things of that sort. So while I can't show you a picture, it's something worth looking at online if you're ever interested in postmodern art. And it's something that was very daring for the time. And I just stuck a picture of Hopico with a chainsaw on it. So this is the part where I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your opinion and what you think while we still have some time, as to whether or not you think that Pop Team Epic's trolling could be considered art. And I'd like to gauge some of your opinions and see what y'all think. So, who would like to say anything regarding their opinion? Do you think that Pop Team Epic or trolling as a whole could be art? Any volunteers? Anyone?
Don't be shy. Come on, guys.
And the silence begins. The crickets chirp in the background.
All right, from an art major, you guys get funny from the trolling, funny from memes, but it cannot be considered art with how freaking viral and mean the teachers could be in the actual program.
So you don't think that it could be considered art?
Nope.
Why is that now? I couldn't quite hear you.
Because you get stuck with one heck of a mean teacher when it comes to your art projects if you're in the program.
Oh yeah, no, I mean if you sit there and say, if you try to hand them a couple pictures of like the Doge or something like that, or some little silly meme and try to pass it off at your art teacher, no, she is not going to be amused with you. That's going to be a lovely grade of fantastic on your paper. But no, there's a lot of different opinions when it comes to this. And one of the things, I actually talked with a guy at a coffee shop about this panel earlier. And when I was speaking with him, I believe his name was Chris, and he's down at the Cool Beans coffee shop, down there across the street. He actually, I was just sitting there asking him what his impression was, and he was sitting there saying to me, well, I don't think that you could consider Pop Team Epic to be postmodern art, because I think it takes away from the original pieces of the time. And I asked him why, and he said, well, because of the fact that if Pop Team Epic is considered an art piece of some kind later down the road of a different quality, then it kind of debases the previous artworks when it's actually something new. It was really confusing. But he basically shut me down in 5 minutes. It was like, no. But there's a lot of ways that I think that it could be considered somewhat artistic, in the sense that we have a lot of art that we see that builds itself off of other people's expectations and other people's feelings. Like, for example, Doki Doki Literature Club. I'm sure some of y'all have heard of that before. It wouldn't be nearly as popular as it was if not for the fact that it completely deconstructed conventions and scared the daylights out of everybody. I sat there just avoiding spoilers until that thing came out, and I watched it, and I actually got into the game, and I played the game for a bit, and it was the stuff of nightmares. And the fact that they also changed it so that way it's different for each person was amazing. But I would consider Doki Doki Literature Club art. I would consider a lot of like performance arts. Like, I don't know if y'all, have any of y'all watched Mega 64 on YouTube? Mega 64 is fantastic because what they'll do is they'll get dressed up as different like cosplay characters like Mario or Luigi, hi Luigi. And what they'll do is they'll go out in public and do crazy things to surprise people, and I would consider this art. But what they did, I loved their Burger Time skit. One of the things that they did was they dressed up as the Burger Time guy and as a hot dog, and the hot dog would wait outside, and they'd go into McDonald's or a restaurant, and they'd walk inside and they'd order a hamburger with no pickles. And the second they see pickles, the guy starts screaming, there's pickles in this, there's pickles in this, and he slams it on the floor and he starts stomping on it, much like the games, where that was kind of the goal. And then the hot dog guy would come in there and go, what is this? And they'd have a fist fight in the middle of the McDonald's, much to the trepidation of everyone there.
Only employees found it fun.
Huh?
The employees found it fun.
I'm sure they did, but I think at one point, if I'm not mistaken, there was one of the episodes where they had like the Burger King employee grab both of them by the ear and throw them out the door.
Yeah.
So they started fighting outside. And then there was the Dig Dug skit where they basically go around the grocery stores and you know all those little circular end caps where they have all the clothes hanging and everything? The Dig Dug guy was just sitting there running around in circles like this and doing little doodles. And just basically acting ridiculous. But there's a lot of different performance arts that they do in a lot of ways that I think art can be portrayed sort of as a performance art. And I do have another question for you, and I know we lightly discussed this, but do you think that memes, video gaming, and other media, how do y'all feel about them being art? And whether or not they have anything in terms of performance? Like, do you think that performances could be considered art in relation to these, or do you think that these are considered art in some way? Do I have any volunteers? Anybody? Yes. They have.
I can't remember which one specifically, but they were considered art by the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was something against California.
Because for years, I remember like with Game Pro and Game Informer and stuff, they were talking about within different articles, they were sitting there saying, such and such art professors think that gaming could never be considered art, and that's not how that's supposed to be, and you know, they would sit there and argue for hours about it. That makes me, I'm really glad to hear that the Supreme Court volunteered. How far ago was this, or how long ago was this that this happened?
Arnold Schwarzenegger was the mayor.
He's still mayor. I think he got reelected.
It was when the time period of him being there. So.
Yeah, one of my favorite governators. Yes.
Considering the fact with memes and not memes, trolling in specific, there's been many different YouTube channels where you literally go around on a battlefield, just to say for EA, and literally troll different characters. And it's actually amazing. When you literally take a bike and then you literally skyrocket it into the sky and then you meet a jet head on, that hilarity ensues. So. Yeah.
Does it play not I'm only interested if it plays that one tune in the background after you skyrocket in the sky.
Oh no, not that one. More like oh yeah.
Nice.
Troll the song. Yes.
But like there's also like websites like Rocket Boom and stuff like that though too, where they'll like talk about each meme, how it started and everything. And if I'm not mistaken, actually, like meme as a term was developed by an actual, either an author or like a psychiatrist or something. I forget what the guy's name was, but there was an actual article where that term was first coined as sort of a repeating picture or repeating theme that kept showing up in pop culture. So we're going to go ahead and get to the contest, and we're going to get to it a little bit earlier than usual. But the contest is this. Anybody that's interested, I'd like to see you raise your hand, but I'd like to ask if any of you can name 4 of the most hated live-action adaptations of popular anime. And the first person that can name 4, I have a DVD and Blu-ray copy of Hellsing Ultimate, volumes 1 through 4. And yes, that is the OVA that includes, you know, Alucard fighting Nazis and all that cool stuff. So do we have any volunteers? Yes, you in the back, sir.
Bakura or
You in
Bram?
the back, sir.
Me or him?
I was calling him real quick.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That was all good.
All right. Live action adaptations.
Has to be anime.
Yeah, live action adaptations of anime that were considered poor by the community.
Right. Dragon Ball is 1.
Oh yeah.
Movie adaptation.
That
Number
pains
2
me.
is oh my goodness. Death Note is 2.
Yes.
Okay.
My dad thought that was good though. That's what hurt me.
Right.
We cried.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
What?
And the Blue Girl.
We didn't know about that one.
What is the blue girl?
It's still anime, but friendly. You know, 18 minus or the can't.
Like, that one might be a maybe.
Yeah. Okay. And last one is oh yeah, Sailor Moon.
Sailor Moon never got an actual. It got a live TV show, but it didn't get an actual movie.
Well, can TV show count? I guess that's an adaptation.
I mean, it would qualify as an adaptation.
Right.
True.
Because it would be adapted. I think that sounds reasonable.
There's 4.
That one was actually decent according to the Japanese population.
Oh, was it considered good by the Japanese population?
Yeah.
That's my
Oh.
personal guess.
All right.
How about
You in the back.
Those 3 and Devilman.
What was the last one?
yeah,
Devilman.
Oh, no. Devilman.
yeah.
Yeah, come up here. Yeah. Oh, that's rough.
Hey,
When Avatar and the Last Airbender movie out,
See, that's one of those like super controversial things we talked for hours about.
yeah, we had 2 hour. Okay, because Nickelodeon is technically not based in Japan, Avatar did not count as an anime because the difference between anime and American anime, which is both are considered cartoons. Don't get me wrong, they're both considered it, but it is based on the morals and the basic construct of the episodes. Japanese and other European countries have a tendency to hide the meaning and you have to figure it out yourself, whereas here in America, we spoon feed it to you and you still ignore it.
But here's the deal with that when you can also go against that. Technically, European and Western cultures consider just because the company is based in Japan or not, is considered as an anime or not. While in Japan considers anime as a technical art style in the format itself, a style of art that you do. As is technically translation for anime means animation. Yeah. So basically, it's a lose-lose, it's a whatever you want to say it is.
We just went for the one that wouldn't bring pitchforks into the building.
Oh, yeah, true.
And admittedly, that was one of those things where, like I said, we were arguing for like hours about that because there was the whole discussion over whether or not anime is defined by whether or not it's the art style or whether or not it's produced in Japan. And that's one thing where a lot of people argue about that a lot in terms of what defines anime. Because if you're going to talk about it being part of the art style, then Scott Pilgrim counts as an anime.
But that one was decent, unlike Gem, which even the fans cried.
Oh, we don't talk about Gem. Why did you bring up Gem? That's not right.
You made me watch this travesty.
That's not right. I only made you watch one episode of this travesty. And it's a delightful travesty, I bet that. I enjoyed it.
To each their
And then
own.
again, like I used to play like the games, half the games that they reference with like Super Mario World and Super Mario Kart and stuff like that. And even they referenced Donkey Kong 2 at one point. And I loved that. I made him play that. And that was fun.
I hate Ramble levels.
How many days did it take us to beat that game?
Oh god, I don't even remember. It took like
Oh, goodness.
2 weekends one day.
This is what happens when you have a family of gamers and anime junkies.
Yeah.
We force others to suffer.
Pretty much.
But while we're on the topic, is there anything that anybody else would like to add regarding art as it pertains to anime, memes, gaming? Yes.
over the recent years, we've seen like VR and stuff slightly bigger thing. Still not as accessible as it needs to be, but I think we've got a new kind of stage here where we're used to looking at a stage where actors play out something, in front of us or looking at a screen. But now, like, it kind of introduces a new way where you're literally sitting in someone's shoes, seeing like Kermit the Frog get a fist like down his mouth. Like, it's really weird. And you see just the most outrageous things, and like, you see people like playing these weird virtual reality, like military things, like they're throwing knives and like throwing stuff in the air, like not only like comedy, but like you see these people balancing magazines on a gun barrel, flipping it up and putting it in the gun, like it's just, they are magical. That's it. Like,
I'm so glad you bring that up though too, because VR technology allows us to do all this crazy stuff. But I also love though too, like if you look at some of the VR stuff they are producing, they're producing VR stuff right now so that way you can actually go into the world of the Miyazaki films and like watch My Neighbor Totoro from a first-person viewpoint. And they're designing really cool stuff like that, and I'm just sitting there going, wow, it's mind-boggling. But yeah, no, they handed us a bunch of technology where we could play 3D characters with a headset and actual body motion controls, and what did we do with it? We made tiny Knuckles memes that run around and terrorize everyone.
I hate that meme with a passion. He
It's
actually
my
had to,
Buddha.
He actually had to duck my fist in a pillow the first time he came to me with that meme.
No, she got so mad. She got so mad. But no, like, we did that, and then if we just stop there, that's one thing, but then that really adorable kitten meme where you have a little parade of kittens and they have the drums and stuff. They've made little parades in VR chat where they're like, yay! You know, and one of my personal favorites in addition, who takes like all of the creepypasta characters and then brings them to VR chat and scares the daylights out of people. With like jump scares and stuff, is so funny. But just, this is what we did with this technology. Technology that our ancestors could never conceive, and we spent it on Knuckles memes. Just wow. Anybody else? Yes?
If that becomes a thing, wouldn't that drastically change anime? Because virtual reality, you got 3D, anime is 2D. And 3D anime is CGI, a lot of people don't like.
I second that. For one, Armitage the Third, and I forgot what it is, another movie where it wasn't really received that well. That instead of being 2D originally back in like the early 1990s, they propelled it into like I think it was 2006. Armitage the Third actually went into 3D, and the community went nuts. They said nice try, but we don't like it. Take it back to the original anime form.
Oh yeah.
Well,
And forgive me for bringing this up since we're talking about different 3D adaptations of anime, but forgive me, anime fandom, for I have sinned. Berserk.
I was about to say that. We had a discussion
I'm so
about
sorry.
Berserk, and he literally asked me to just breathe because that was the worst thing ever. Like, we literally went from Cross-Ange, which had seamless cross transition of CG, to watching Fireworks, which he is loved to death. And I'll agree it was decent except for some of the CG, to Berserk literally could have just been a video game.
Yep.
But and it probably would have made a doggone sweet video game, honestly. I think I would have loved that. But that being said, though, I'm glad that y'all mentioned that and bring that up, because that we are seeing anime change because of monetary cost and things like that. We're seeing it lean more and more into CGI, and I can understand why you don't like that. Like, I personally, I love the Miyazaki films where everything's hand-drawn. It is gorgeous, and you just can't get that same art style from CG as of right now with the technology that we've got, is what I want to say. But then we have stuff like Appleseed and Appleseed Ex Machina, and I'm like, why can't we do this? Why can't we do this now? Instead we have like the weird CGI children of like the Cthulian creatures from Overlord and all this. They slipped into Overlord, and I'm like, no. I liked this show. Don't do this to me.
You'll curse me out on this one, but Final Fantasy, the first movie that came out.
We don't talk about that.
Wait.
We don't talk about that. We do not talk about the very first Final Fantasy movie. That doesn't exist. It's up there with the Mario. We don't talk about that.
The Abbott Children was pretty good. No?
Abbott Children was good.
Wasn't the first movie.
She's talking about Spirits Within, though, is what she's talking about. That's heresy.
No.